In Chapter 4 of Giving Reasons, David Morrow talks about hidden premises. Hidden premises are premises that are unstated, but that are still needed in order to prove the conclusion. Often, a hidden premise will be unstated because it's obvious, because the arguer figured that it wasn't necessary to say it out loud, since we all know it. So, for example, if I say, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal, the hidden premise is obviously all men are mortal. But I don't need to say that out loud explicitly because we all know that. That's an easy thing for us to assume. And the argument works just as well with that premise being hidden. But sometimes hidden premises are unstated because they're controversial. And the arguer may be covering them up or trying to avoid drawing a lot of attention to them. They might be the weak point in the argument. More often than that, hidden premises are unstated because they're simply assumed without a lot of thought being given to them. And for these reasons, it's going to be a valuable skill for you to be able to identify and to state the hidden premises in arguments that you're considering, either they're your own arguments or other people's. So let's look at an example. On page 21, Morrow gives the basic argument of the Declaration of Independence. In another video, I've talked about the reliability of the explicit premise in this argument. What I want to do right now is to take a look at the argument that he gives and identify the hidden premise that it requires. So on page 21, Morrow writes this: "Since King George III has mistreated the American colonies so badly," that's the premise, "the colonies ought to be free and independent from the king," and that's the conclusion. Now notice what we have here. The premise is about mistreatment of the colonies. The conclusion is about the independence of the colonies. And now what connects these two subjects is the hidden premise. The hidden premise should show us the connection between being mistreated by the king and deserving independence from the king. So let's think of some possible ways we could take this hidden premise and articulate it and make it explicit and put it into speech where we can evaluate it to see if it's true and reliable. One possibility would be this: any colony that is badly mistreated should be independent. So if I add that premise to the argument would read this way: King George III has badly mistreated the American colonies, and any colony that is badly mistreated should be independent. Therefore, the American colonies ought to be free and independent of the king. When I put it that way, the argument seems to work. The premises are relevant to the conclusion. The premises are certainly strong enough to prove the conclusion. If the American colonies are badly mistreated and every colony that's badly mistreated deserves independence, then plainly the American colonies deserve independence. The question comes up about reliability, though. It looks to me like the hidden premise might be a little bit doubtful. Is it truly the case that every colony that is mistreated or badly mistreated should be independent? Is that the first and the only option available for colonies reacting to being mistreated by their king or by their sovereign? What I would probably want to do to save this line of argument is to make my hidden premise more specific. Colonies that are mistreated in this way should deserve independence, or colonies who could govern their own affairs, as arguably the American colonies could, those colonies who are badly mistreated in these specific ways should be independent. And again, if you take a look at the text of the Declaration of Independence, a lot of what goes on in the middle part of the document is attempting to establish the exact nature of the mistreatment. And we might also look at evidence elsewhere for the American colonies being able to govern themselves. So with a bit of modification and being made a bit more specific, I think that hidden premise could make this argument explicitly good, could supply the need and bring that hidden premise out into the open. That's not the only way that I could supply the hidden premise, however. I could try something along these lines. The colonies, no colonies ought to be mistreated, and independence will end the mistreatment of the colonies. So if I add those to the argument, it reads this way: King George III has mistreated the American colonies very badly. No colony should be mistreated, and independence will bring an end to the mistreatment of the American colonies. Therefore, the colonies ought to be free and independent of the king. And again, this will work. It seems to, these hidden premises, when they're made explicit, seem to fill the logical gap between the explicit premise and the conclusion, which is really the job that you're trying to do when you're supplying a hidden premise. The question would come up then of the reliability of these premises. Can we endorse the idea that no colony should be mistreated and that independence will end the mistreatment? We might also want to ask, is independence the only way of ending the mistreatment? Are there other ways of ending the mistreatment of the colonies that would be better or less radical short of full independence? We would consider those issues in trying to supply these hidden premises for the argument. So that's my quick look at hidden premises with some examples of how to supply them. We'll talk more about this in the future. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.